Welcome to Wide Flank.
Hi, and welcome back to Wide Flank. Today, we're starting another Gameclub series. I'm joined by Dugan. Welcome back, my man.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
This time, we're playing The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, the direct sequel to our last Gameclub series, Ocarina of Time. Came out on October 26, 2000. Same day that PlayStation 2 was released. I don't know if you knew that. Kind of crazy.
Competitive.
Yeah, we'll be doing 4 episodes for Majora's Mask. This is episode 1. Episode 2, I'll be with Hayden, aka Hack, on Discord, playing through the Great Bay Temple and aftermath of that. And quickly, before we dive into this episode, just wanted to do a little bit of admin. Thanks, as always, to our Patreon subscribers, helping keep the pod alive, our small little pod. And do us a favor, just share the episodes, like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff that podcasters ask from their listeners. And that's about it. Dude, where do we want to begin on this fucking game?
Oh man, I mean, you could go so many different directions. I said this in the channel when we kicked off this game club. This is far and away my favorite Zelda game, which makes it a strong contender for my favorite game of all time. It's just incredible. Everything about this game is incredible. Yeah, I've had a blast replaying through our section, which we played through, up through the Woodfall Temple and the aftermath. Just sort of like remembering and reliving how dark and eerie and unsettling this whole experience is.
It's so good. I'm surprised how little I remember. There's little moments where I'm like, oh, this thing, or like this reused character model from Ocarina. Like I kind of remember them in this context and not that context. But I didn't remember the darkness. I think maybe I just literally it just went over my head. Like I was just a 13-year-old just playing a Zelda, and I didn't really grab on all these artistic decisions that they were making and how weird everything is, and the deeper meanings of the game. But I think the intro title sequence is immediately showing you what kind of game this is, and it's it's very Lynchian, which I think I'm going to reference a lot just because it really reminds me of so much David Lynch shit. But it's just this weird little town, and it's very clearly not Ocarina, but it kind of looks like Ocarina. It's just a different town, and everyone's just happy, and the sun is up and doing construction, and Link is sitting on the scaffolding, and you're just oh, cute little town with cute little Zelda music playing. And then the camera pans up and it's climbing this clock tower, and there's this demon growl, and you see Skull Kid. Well, now we know he's called Skull Kid, but you see this fucking weird kid with glowing eyes, and the music starts getting weirder and more evil and more funky and just crazy sounding, and you see this moon, and the moon is huge and evil right behind Dugan right now, and then all of a sudden the title just flies in, and it's purple, and there's this mask, and it's just holy shit.
Yeah, even before that you have the mask on the completely black screen. It's such this stark contrast from the ambient peacefulness of the horse galloping on the Ocarina screen. It's already kind of telling you this is going to be a completely different tone of game. And it sets you up really interestingly to come in and to go into that opening sequence. You've lost an important friend. You're out in the woods trying to find that friend being Navi, the fairy companion from Ocarina. And then you're kind of immediately met with this conflict that is just so different and distinct from the really archetypical big bad evil guy of Ganondorf and saving the princess of all those things that are sort of really common story elements and that obviously manifest themselves in Ocarina of Time. You're met with this really different interaction. So yeah, I had this moment when I was going through that opening sequence where one of the things that I had forgotten that I thought was amazing is after Skull Kid knocks you off your horse and is stealing all your stuff, he grabs your ocarina, and if you're just sitting on the menu, he's just playing a note and then giggling, and then playing a note and then giggling, and you're just this is such a crazy funny implementation of sound effects. It's just creating this like totally different energy as you go into this game than Ocarina was.
And they're like almost making fun of Ocarina in a way. You know what I mean? Like they're just being like, that was just like this dumb, childish game. Skull Kid's literally laughing at how childish and like cute that game is in your face, right? Like it's really fresh for us because we just played Ocarina, but I'd imagine, you know, most kids had also just played Ocarina like a year or two before this came out and remember it pretty well and like probably have this attachment to like Epona and Ocarina and all this stuff. And yeah, you're just getting like laughed at and made fun of. And there's two weird fairies. And this kid is like, you find out really quick that Skull Kid is just like way more powerful than you. Like he's just like is using like psychic force to like make you have a Deku nightmare. And then you kind of like wake up from the nightmare and you're looking at your reflection and you're now a Deku. You're no longer Link. You're Deku Link. And like he completely like body morphed you. And you're just like, it's just so like intense and crazy right at the beginning.
Yeah, you all of a sudden get into this like completely stuck state. You have your sort of Alice in Wonderland moment too, where you're like falling down the pit into this like other world.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like this is. I was trying to think of the best like film analogy that I could like if Ocarina of Time is like Citizen Kane, this is like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I couldn't think of a really good one. Yeah. This is just it's Ocarina of Time on acid is the easiest way like that I could think to describe it. It's like such a wild trip, and you're sort of being set up in this little intro sequence of like going through the forest, getting transformed, you know, to be prepared for anything, to be prepared for something that is like so distinctly different than what your experience was like in Hyrule, even though it's leveraging, you know, the same core mechanics. Yeah. You know, it's super, super creepy. As you're going through that space too, you run into that like super morphed Deku tree. That I don't know if you figured out what that's supposed to be in this sequence.
Not yet, but your new fairy companion Tattle or whatever is like oh, it kind of looks like you. And in my head I was just like, fuck you, like this like melting face little tree, like you rude fucker. But no, I don't know what that is yet.
It's not a terrible spoiler. It's like the Deku spirit that manifested itself into the like form that you take when you put on the Deku mask. It's like an actual Deku individual who lived, who's actually a character that I'll reference a little bit later in our Talking's son. But so yeah, I had the same questions here when I was playing through this again. I remember reading a bunch of different you know, random interpretations of like what Majora's Mask and the, you know, the sort of like parallel world to Hyrule of, you know, the Termina world is supposed to represent. And as you're going through this sequence and this transition too, I think it's really interesting to ask yourself those questions. Like, is this a metaphor for death? Is this a metaphor for like just a bad dream? This game plays like a nightmare version of Ocarina of Time that you're trapped in. And to your point about seeing like the familiar characters and that sort of stuff, having those characters like displaced into new situations, you know, a new town. In some cases, you have bad characters that were good or good characters that were bad. The Skull Kid being a prime example of that. Yep. I don't know if you interacted with him in Ocarina, but he is
isn't he in the Lost Woods? It's that kid, right?
Yeah. He's a character in the Lost Woods. You get something for playing Saria song to him. He's one of the quest lines in the Happy Mask Salesman quest. But he's all in all just sort of like a kind of like lost, forgotten, you know, means well, but maybe doesn't have any friends kind of kid.
Like I always thought of like the sort of people in Lost Woods and Ocarina as just like, they've like gone mad and they're like cursed or something like that, right? I think there's like loose mentions of that in Ocarina, like, oh my god, like I think Navi says like this was just a kid or something. And now, like you're gonna turn into this if you don't get out of the Lost Woods or so. It's some sort of loose reference to like, oh man, this is like a fucked up area where like bad stuff happens.
But yeah, once you see that stuff and those reused assets and those reused characters applied into these sort of like different situations, it really does start to feel like a dream. It's like you've gone through, you think about a normal dreaming cycle, you've gone through a day, you've taken all this, visual, audio, sensory information that then pops up and manifests itself in sort of like strange and unconventional ways when you yourself are dreaming at night. And that's what this game feels like. Jumping ahead a little bit, but just like the interacting with the potion ladies who are the final boss of the spirit temple,
twin Nova or whatever. Yeah.
Like they're displaced. They're something that you remember, but now is like just applied in a completely different manner. So it's so like throws everything that you're familiar with from, like you said, a game that came out in Ocarina only 2 years before this, throws it completely on its head, upside down.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I think if they had more time and more of a budget, they probably wouldn't have reused assets. But like this game was made in like such an intense time crunch that really ended up adding to the art and aesthetics that you're talking about, like almost unintentionally. But again, that's like kind of why I just kept coming back to this in my notes. I kept just being like, really Lynchian, I'm not like I'm not like an authority on films, but just like the uncanniness of like, it's Link, and like, I know some of these characters, and like I know some of this music, there's reused music at different parts that then is like warped or like speeds up or slows down, or there's like some dark stuff underneath it. It almost sounds like two tracks playing at once at points. And just, I don't know, this dark, ominous tone that is like from the very first frame of turning on the game, like you mentioned, it's just a black screen with a mask like flying at you through like every moment of the game. It's just incredible. It feels so good.
The other thing that makes this, I think, a really unique game and why it's part of one of my probably my favorite Zelda game. Not probably. It is my favorite Zelda game. Is the like two linchpin characters of this whole universe are two like really minor role players that you could have missed in Ocarina of Time. In the form of the Happy Mask Salesman and Skull Kid. So when you come out the other side in this world and you're there with the Happy Mask Salesman, you've been met with a terrible fate, haven't you? That moment when you're in the bottom of Clock Tower.
We should tell people what that is, though. I mean, basically, you're like the Happy Mask Salesman is he just like runs a shop in Ocarina's market, and you can do a side quest or you don't have to. It's completely optional. And he's just this weird dude who just collects masks. And he, like you said, like he is so key to this whole story. Like, because Link is just, at the beginning, Link is just wandering through these woods on Epona, the horse from Ocarina. You have no idea where you are. You don't really know what's going on. Everyone's just kind of sad. And then like you get knocked off. You mentioned like he steals your Ocarina. The same thing happened to the Mask Salesman. He got like ambushed by Skull Kid. Skull Kid took the Majora's Mask, the name of the game, and that's why he's all powerful and psycho. But you having to interact with this minor side quest from Ocarina, another like really cool decision by them. There's multiple little subtleties in this game where I'm thinking they thought this was real. They being the developers thought this was a really cool part in Ocarina, and maybe like underused or underdeveloped. And like one example that is like very immediate is like as you're escaping the intro area and like making it to the clock tower where the game actually begins, you go through like another twisted hallway, like from the forest temple. And I was just like, oh, like I know this, it's just like, oh, now this isn't just like a cool sort of not that significant part of the forest temple. Now it's like an entrance to a parallel universe. I feel like that's like how you're supposed to interpret it now. And there's a lot of like little things like that from Ocarina that they use in a better way, I think.
Yeah, I love leveraging these two characters from like minor quest lines. Like I said, it's just such a stark contrast from the the like save the princess from the big bad evil guy narrative. It's amazing. And it brings you into this sort of, first cycle. You're sort of introduced to this idea that, time is moving forward in this game and that you have like 3 days to accomplish something. Which I remember the first time I played this game, I played it at like a demo booth in a Toys R Us or something. Wow. And whoever had been playing before me had like already gotten to the point of, spoilers, returning to former self. Obviously, you become Link again at some point in this game, normal human Link.
Yeah.
And I was just like running around Termina Field. There were like some new enemies that I wasn't familiar with from Ocarina. It felt like a pretty like, conventional sequel. In that little exposure that I had just playing for 15-20 minutes at a toy store. So I bought the game obviously because I love the original. I'm about 10 years old at this time, and I come home, I plug it in, I go through this Lost Woods sequence. All of a sudden I'm a fucking scrub. Actually, I'm a fucking Deku scrub.
Deku.
I don't have a sword. I can't leave this town. I can't interact with anyone because I'm experiencing the worst kind of Deku racism that you could ever experience. Yeah, the dog chasing you. All the shopkeepers are like, "I don't serve your kind." Like, like it's like a really weird, unsettling experience where you're like, "Wait, I thought I knew what this game was going to be all about. This is not at all what I was expecting." And on top of all that, you have this pressure that you're starting to feel from this timer. And I wrote this down and referenced it a little bit in our Ocarina of Time episodes. Like, time limits in games suck. And I knew that when I was 10 years old when I was playing this. And a big part of why I probably knew that or felt that way was because of a lot of the Ocarina time limit puzzles. And we talked a lot about how some of those were like
and stuff like that. Yeah, just like random, like all of a sudden there's a 2-minute clock, and it's like, okay,
it's arbitrary, but it creates this pressure within you that like as a player it just like doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
You don't enjoy that feeling, especially if there's not like a logical reason. Like we talked at the end of the 3rd episode, like leaving Ganon's castle on a time limit. Okay, yeah, the castle's crumbling. But yeah, entering a room where there's completely static blocks that you have to move around in some fashion on a 2-minute timer. Why am I being made to feel this sort of pressure?
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense. And I remember that was a mechanic that I like really despised kind of because of a lot of these moments in Ocarina. So you enter this situation where not only is this a mechanic, it is a constantly persistent mechanic outside of like the menu system or like some cutscenes. Like time is always moving forward. And you might say to yourself, well, Chris, you hate these sort of mechanics. Why do you love this game?
That's what I was going to ask.
It's because when you put this so central and you design every aspect of the system around it, you create this really, really thoughtful, meaningful kind of environment that's made out of all these different interactions, some of which can happen on the first day, some of which can happen on the 3rd day, some of which can happen at night, some of which involve characters moving from one location to another.
Right.
And then you also get this amazing sort of narrative device around this. Like, oh, the Clocktown Festival is in 3 days. Oh, at the end of 3 days, we're gonna punish this foolish monkey again to get a little bit ahead. Like you have these like really, really crazy moments that you can set up where it's like, wow, I really want to make sure this doesn't happen or this does happen. You get really invested because obviously this is just the first cycle we're talking about, but you start to get invested in like watching these people's lives unfold on repeat and the kind of impact and interactions that you can have with them while you're in this world and while you can while you control this power to reset everything. It's like,
I think we haven't mentioned actually like what the loop is. Like, sorry to interrupt, but like
go for it.
No, I mean it starts with the first sort of quest, and you don't really know that it's going to be constant at this point. The Happy Mask Salesman is just like, recover the thing that Skull Kid stole from you, Ocarina, and return my mask to me. You have 72 hours until the moon crashes into this town and literally kills everyone.
Yeah. Literal apocalypse.
Yeah, literal apocalypse. So, and this moon, which again, behind Dugan, for those watching on YouTube, is just like getting closer and closer. It has this fucked up face, and yeah, it's just gonna kill everyone. And it's important. Everyone knows it's gonna kill everyone. Everyone in the town is like, man, like this moon. There's a few like moon deniers, which is kind of funny. But most people are just like, oh man, like I hope that moon doesn't go, and they get like sadder and sadder and more stressed as the cycle continues, and it's getting closer and closer. But what you figure out soon is the game only takes place in these 3 days, and your only ability to like interact with the game is to get stuff done during your cycle and then reset time by playing the Song of Time on your ocarina, in which you only keep your like songs you've learned and like essential new items you've picked up.
Yeah, like the key items, not the sort of like quantities of those items. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, like you keep the bow, but you don't keep arrows. But you don't even keep like keys within dungeons or fairies within dungeons. Like you really just keep like the bare bones. And then everything starts again. No one remembers who you are. Everyone does their same tasks that they did again. And you like, it's just fucking trippy. Like when you first realize like what's happening and like, this is the game. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. And like, you immediately are confronted with like some things where you're like, oh, fuck, like, I didn't do that. Like, I have to do that again. Like, for me, it was like the Great Fairy. Like, that was my first moment where I was like, oh, she's not like put together. Like, I have to go find the fairy again to put her back together again in Clocktown. Because like, I did that on my first cycle, and now it's a new cycle. You
feel a sort of, guilt. Almost for the things that you maybe resolved previously, but have not resolved yet on this playthrough. And the game is designed in such a way that you can't do everything in a single playthrough, obviously. So it's a really interesting sort of like playing of your emotions as a player and doing that. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the Deku loop. So the first loop that you go through, you have like a really, really limited amount of things that you can do. The guards at the gates of this clock town are like leaving you. They won't let you out. Again, Deku raises them. They're like, we don't trust you to go out into this like terribly dangerous field, you little baby kid. So there's only so much that you can do in terms of like interacting within the town. And you have this, as you mentioned, this task that the mask salesman has asked you to do to get your precious item back in his mask back. So I want to hear a little bit about like your experience of going through the motions of exploring this town. Sort of, were you able to figure it all out in the first loop? Those sorts of things. Curious how you made your way around Clocktown.
So I did the whole intro thing that we kind of already talked about, and I started the loop, and then I made a decision and said, I'm gonna take a break and I'm gonna read the fucking manual, because I'm not gonna get stuck on some dumb thing and get really annoyed like I did with Ocarina. And I don't consider it a spoiler. It's in the manual, but it kind of just explains how shit works. It's just like you're in a loop, this saves, this doesn't save, like, and it just shows with very mild spoilers. It shows like how a mask works, and like you transform into this, and later you'll transform into a Goron, and later you'll transform into a Zora, like just mild spoilers like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I felt like I'm ready to take on the game. I have a loose understanding of what's going on, and I felt more prepared to like explore, as opposed to like, I think if I didn't read that, maybe I would have felt like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to find this shit, and I'm feeling really rushed or something like that.
Yeah, like, and the time limits.
Time limit. It just like gives a different weight to like everything you're doing. I feel like the cycle stuff, like you're always racing against the clock, like your clock, the cycle clock, and this like run. Like it's almost like a run in like a, more modern interpretation of like a roguelite or whatever. It's almost like, okay, like let this run, I want to do this, like hopefully I have enough time, and if not, I have to reset and then go back. But anyway, so I mean, I had a lot of like, oh my God, it's the mask guy from Ocarina, like, like all that kind of stuff that we kind of mentioned already. And I noticed immediately like reusing the town music, and I was like reusing character models, reusing like the fairy scream, like little stuff like that. I was just like, it was what you're talking about. It was like that uncanniness that's like throughout the whole game of just like, I kind of know who these people are, but actually everyone's different. Like the Song of Storms windmill guy is there, like just shredding by the lake. I'm like, what is happening now? Like, am I supposed to play the song? Like, I have to look up the Ocarina song. Like, but yeah, I mean, eventually you kind of make it. You do the stuff for the bombers, the little gang in town,
the gang of like actual children.
It's like
it's
5-year-old gang. Yeah, they're so cute. And you get the bomber's notebook, and you go to the astronomer, and it's beautiful music in the astronomer zone, like so cool and so chill and nice to be there. You look through the telescope, you see fucking Skull Kid like dancing on top of the clock tower, like
smacking his ass.
You see like moon tears, like literal asteroids falling from the fucked up moon. It's just like so much color and flavor in this first cycle, which eventually ends with you like confronting Skull Kid and the fairy kind of telling you, what did she say? The swamp, the mountain, the ocean, the canyon, like bring the four together. So I'm like, okay, that's going to be the temples, like I have a rough idea. I have a rough idea what's happening.
I played Ocarina. I see the red text here.
Yes,
yeah.
Like I've played Zelda games. And that's when you get the Song of Healing. You get to take the mask off, and now you have like a totally new mechanic.
You get the Song of Time actually, and that's when you get your first reset that takes you back to the mask salesman,
which is so sick. Like this cool animation of Link like falling through all these clocks, and like it's just great. Eventually, the mask salesman, even though you only got the Ocarina and didn't get his mask, still treats you.
How good is that moment
good.
when he gives you the Song of Healing, he fixes your life, gives you the Deku mask. That Song of Healing, by the way, is beautiful. Another certified banger. It's so good.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "You got my mask back, right?" Big pause. And then this character model, who I don't think in Ocarina of Time ever opened his eyes, and certainly not yet in this game ever opened his eyes, opens his eyes in like the scariest, creepiest. He's like, like looking right directly at you, like, and it's just like, you didn't get it. This is tragic. Like this is horrible. Shaking you. Like, and the other thing before that is when you like leave the Deku spirit too, and it takes you back into that Deku nightmare that you referenced. Link is like waving away to the spirit, going away. It's this like really like cool, touching moment. And
so surreal.
So surreal, so creepy, so unsettling but cute at the same time. This is such a cool moment when you come back in and you're starting the game proper at this point.
That's
like you've
really
done
the start of the game.
You've done the first cycle as the very limited Deku spirit. You've explored and learned about Clock Town, about time, about how all these things, and now you come out here and you're like, wait a second, this is all reset. Right. This, the music is back to normal. It's super fast in day 3. Like the tower that they were building is back to square one. Everything is back, and we can start to look at this like, let's explore and see what else there is to find out about this world.
That Groundhog Day loop, whatever that's called. I don't know if there's an actual name for like
it's a time loop.
Yeah, time loop, but in like media or something like that. But it also like that's the beginning when you get the mask off you, and the mask salesman explains that like whenever you put it on, you'll transform into Deku Link and have like those abilities. That's like such a new mechanic right there. Like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I have like multiple links. And I'm going to probably need to like combine what they're good at, like, which you obviously do a lot when you reach the first temple. It's like, I need to use Deku Link to fly over there. And then I need to rip the mask off and pull out my bow. And then, like they love to play with that, which I just found really thrilling and fun. To have like, I mean, there's this really old like Super Nintendo game that I was reminded of. I don't know why this game always sticks in my mind, but it's something Vikings, and like you control 3 different Vikings at once, and they all have like different skills or whatever, and you can like transform into them. It's kind of like that. It's like you look at a room in a dungeon, and you're like, oh, okay, I need to like dive into this flower and fly over there as Deku Link, and then I need to turn into normal Link and jump over this thing or whatever, and that just like unlocks a whole new set of mechanics for you.
Yeah, I am struggling to remember how many like unique non-mask items there are in this game. It's been a while since I've played it. But that's definitely, it's definitely something that provides a really stark contrast from like the types of problems that you're able to solve with like the Ocarina kit. Like they include obviously a lot of the Ocarina kit in this game, but then you start to change like how you interact with water as a Deku, like like you said, an ability to fly, like all these ability to die instantly if you touch fire, which I don't know if that happened to you.
Did not happen to me, but good to know.
Yeah, it does happen. And all these sorts of things. Yeah, I think it creates a really, really interesting sort of like puzzle dynamic to your point, that makes it, familiar in that there's a lot of the same sort of like mental checks and processes that you go through in doing this, but very different from, the kit that you had when you were in Ocarina.
And also just like continuing with the theme of like dark underbelly, which this game just never ceases to exist, is like putting on the Deku mask.
Oh my god, I was just about to say this.
Like, dude, like you're literally like Link is screaming in agony. Like, and like it's like a complete fucking nightmare. Like, so it feels so painful and bad. And you're just doing it over and over again. Like, I feel like as the player, I'm almost torturing my character by like taking it off, putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, because it's a complete hell, painful nightmare every single time.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, it makes me think of the movie The Mask too, right?
Oh my god, yeah.
Like how crazy and intense those sorts of transformations are. Taking you from, one form to another form, and that the form that you're going into is like a dead, tortured soul of a Deku spirit. Yeah. Like it's so creepy, man. So good. Yeah. I like that you can skip that, but I
started skipping it a little bit, but you do lose a little bit of like flavor when you skip it. I feel like
it's true.
You take yourself out of the world a little bit, I think.
A little bit, but yeah, it would be because of how much back and forth you do. It would be a lot.
It's a lot.
But I'm glad it's there. Definitely.
No, it's great color. It's really twisted and dark. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said when you became Link, you went and did the fairy again. Was there anything else that you did like around Clocktown before you headed out to the field to start exploring, or?
I'm trying to think. I mean, not that much. I mean, I got the Bomber's Notebook. I bought the Woodfall map. I kind of just interacted like with the same people a little bit. I figured out that you can like deposit your rupees in a bank, little things like that. But there wasn't like anything very specific that a task that I really wanted to get done or something like that. I kind of just continued into Termina Field, which you think is going to be like Hyrule Field, but it's totally not at all. It's just like, it is an open space, obviously, and there's like enemies and stuff like that, but it kind of just like leads you towards, the Woodfall area, and there's other, already that there's 4 other in the other cardinal directions areas that probably have their own fields or something like that. So it's like more small.
It's really, I actually really don't like Termina Field.
Yeah.
I think that it's not that I love Hyrule Field or something like that. And I think that there are some interesting things that happen in Termina Field. But it's definitely like it's really not organic. And even a lot of the like level design itself feels just kind of like random. Like if you leave through the South Gate to go to like the Woodfall area, there's just like a big like tree trunk that you go through and some random scattered enemies and trees and Deku flowers. It like kind of feels like they phoned it in here a little bit.
I agree. It's also not central, right? Like it's like a little bit of just a departure from like the classic Zelda formula of like central field, like that is attached to everywhere you need to go and attached to the castle where Princess Zelda is and all that stuff. It's just like a field. It's like like an on the way to another zone. It's like just a passing place.
Yeah, it's nothing special. And then you do have that really nice moment when you're heading into Woodfall where Tattle sees the drawing that she did with Skull Kid, where you get a little bit of like insight into, you know, how he mugged the mask salesman, how they became friends, like why, like he's like so misunderstood, but also he's always playing tricks. Like you get this like really, really fun backstory to, you know, the big conflict in this game. And I mean, for me, it makes me feel conflicted too about like everything that you're doing. Like obviously you want to help the mask salesman because he has crazy eyes, and because you got mugged by this kid. But it also gives you sort of like this pause. It's not just
and he
like
killed your horse. It's bad.
He let your horse go. Let's just say that. But yeah, it's this moment where you're just kind of like, man, do I like empathize with this villain? Like it's a really, really unique take on a Zelda villain. I feel like that, like Ganondorf as the epitome of evil just doesn't have. Like,
it's a lot more complex for sure. Like he's literally, you see him in this memory you're talking about, like he's sitting in the hollowed out tree, like just weeping. Because he's like so lonely and has
that sound effect is so good.
Yeah, like it's so weird and good. The whole memory is weird, and you get the forest song from Ocarina comes in. And it's like, oh shit. Also, like I forgot to mention the Termina. I think it's Termina Field is where you get the I was gonna look this up what it's actually called, but like the classic Zelda theme music. Like,
more than Hyrule,
it doesn't exist in Ocarina. I realized, like, once I heard it, because I'm very familiar with like the NES Link and SNES Link to the Past. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the fucking theme, and like I realized that Ocarina, like, I guess took a risk, you might call it, or just went in a different direction by not including it. So I was happy to hear that theme again.
Yeah, I mean, it continues to support this idea that this is like a fever dream Zelda of like, you know, things that like linger from your past experiences, whether that's Ocarina or like the other titles.
Totally.
You mentioned buying the Woodfall map, and you know, on the way to Woodfall, you find Tingle again.
Oh my god,
Tingle is so good, right,
dude? The Tingle character, like he looks so funny, like he looks like a paint roller, like just like painted his face on. It's like when you early sports games when you could do like create a player and you could like take a picture with like your, I don't even know what system this started with, like maybe Wii or something like that. You like take your photo and put it on like an NBA create a player. Like that's what Tingle's face looks like. It's like some 2D horrible photo of a face. Like copy pasted onto a 3D model. It's so good.
He is so goofy looking. And the thing that I had forgotten that like maybe actually burst out laughing is his magic words.
What is it?
I just looked it up. That's what I was typing. He goes, tingle, tingle, kulu, limpa. Those are the magic words of Tingle. Don't steal them.
He's so good. He's such a freak.
Yeah, one of the first kind of like new characters that, oh man, he's just a psycho. It's so good.
He's in a bunch of other Zeldas after this, I think, or like right. Like I kind of remember this.
I think this is the first Tingle ever, but I'm not as well versed in the early Zeldas. So
he doesn't exist in the early ones. No way.
Yeah, so I had to say the magic words before we keep going into Woodfall. There, just don't steal them. Like I just can hear you. Like there's no voiceover in this, but I just hear it in my head, right? Of like this goofy ass dude, like being silly.
He's so cute and weird. But yeah, you're going to Woodfall. You know this is kind of going to be like the first temple. Like it's basically like their forest temple, right? It's even called Woodfall, and it's green or whatever. And yeah, so you go in, and I thought I messaged you guys at some point. I was like, I think I'm at the beginning of Woodfall. It's like when I went to sleep or something. I was like, I'll pick it up tomorrow. And you go, and there's like this river and like a swamp boat tour. And like
the tour guide,
which is like unavailable to you yet. So you kind of have to like go in through the water as Deku Link and follow this monkey through a maze. You're doing all these like little weird, very Zelda-y kind of like mini quests or like little side gig things. You see this, you mentioned the sisters, the potion sisters that were the final, like second final boss in
the Spirit Temple boss. One of them sells potions and the other is a swamp tour guide.
Like it's so good. So good. You kind of like rescue her, and she will now let you take the swamp tour, and you just like see some new enemies and like these monkeys you've never seen and who can talk, and you see the giant like octo whatever, I forget what it's called, to like suck you in and spit you out and won't let you pass.
Yeah, I think that's actually the mini boss too from Jabba Jabba's belly.
Yes.
Same asset.
Same.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of you're going through and you're checking all these boxes of people and their problems, and one thing that I think is again really fun about this is like remembering that this is all on a time cycle.
Yes.
Like you resolve this, you resolve these people's problems, and then they reset. When you play the Song of Time and you reset it, so you can save this lady from the woods as many times as you want. Like it's really interesting to think about like how you help them in an insular cycle and how that help disappears after you go back to the dawn of the first day, which we didn't even talk about the black screen with the white on text, which whoopsies, that is, I mean, an amazing loading screen, obviously, to set up some of the resets that they have to do here.
And the
but
sound
also it's
effect.
It's so iconic.
What does it say? It just says like
dawn of the first day, 72 hours remain, or what have you.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, Ocarina of Time, like, literally has time in the title of the game, but it's not really about time at all. But Majora's, it's just so constant. It's literally the main resource of the game, and it's constantly depleting. There's almost never a moment where it's not depleting. Big clock in the middle bottom of the screen that's always there, telling you like what day it is. You hear the chimes or whatever, the clock tower chimes, like whenever a new day is coming, or midnight or whatever. It's just great. It's always there.
This is probably a good moment for me to ask, did you discover the two, I'll call them like the two informal songs?
What did I have at this point?
These are not songs that go into like the menu screen.
I know one of them, which is playing Song of Time backwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Slows down time. But I don't know
30%, I think it slows it down.
But I don't know the other one that you're talking about,
The other one is the Song of Double Time, which is if you play the first three notes of the Song of Time, but double, so like da-da-da-da-da-da, like that.
I see.
That advances you, I think, 12 hours.
Okay. That's useful.
Yeah, really, really useful little things. And the tweaks on these songs, like I actually really love the inverted Song of Time.
Yeah.
It plays really nicely backwards, and the sort of like response to the motive is like falling off, kind of like it's really, really good. And just a really fun play on this like super iconic song that folks coming from Ocarina would be really familiar with.
Yeah, and they let Koji Kondo cook. They let him be like weird and experimental, along with every part of this game. It wouldn't make sense if the music was really straightforward Zelda and everything else was this weird, but it's just so nice. Like it's married so well. But yeah,
Okay.
then eventually you make it into the temple eventually, which I did via the swamp tour, which I assume is the only way to get past the Octo thing. Yeah, because I tried for a while of just like kill every enemy, because that's like a classic Zelda, right? Didn't work. Like tried like turning into Deku and then normal Link and blowing a bubble at the Octo thing to try and get by it, because I was so certain at that point I need to get by this fucker to like get in, and couldn't do it. So I wrote to you and Hayden and Sean what I am now calling like Zelda logic, which I realize is what people call like, it's like a meme format, but I don't mean it like that at all. For me, what I wrote down when I said Zelda logic is, what's the most annoying thing? And what's the one thing that I was too lazy to do that's probably essential? And that actually got me out of being stuck 2 times. Because I was like, oh, I guess I need to go to the hags and save the swamp tour lady and then go do her swamp tour. Fine, I'll go do her swamp tour. And obviously that got me right through. And I was like, okay. And then the next time what was the thing? Oh, it was like the Deku Palace. Because I was like, I did both of the sort of like side rooms that you're not supposed to go into.
You did those first?
I did those first. I was like, oh, I'll sneak around. Like, I don't care about what's going on in the main room. And then
you don't want to see the foolish monkey?
Well, I didn't know he was. Yeah, I was just like, whatever. It's not for me. I'm not here to judge. I'm just doing my thing. Skip that because I'm an idiot and bad at single player games. And then I just kept going, and I eventually got to the area where eventually is the Woodfall Temple, and I kind of knew it was there. I messaged you guys. I was like, I'm there. Like the fairy cave is there. So I did the exact same thing. I killed every enemy. That wasn't it. I like jumped on all the lily pads. I played songs. I was like, okay, like, so I'm clearly missing something right now. What's the one thing that I was too lazy to do because I didn't care? Went back to Deku Palace, went to go see the monkey. It's like, I know what's going on now. I know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
You gotta help him.
Yeah.
He's so cute. Can't leave him tied up. Are they, I don't know that they ever explicitly say it. Are they going to eat him? Like, I
think they're gonna, spit roast them or whatever. But it's really fucked up because, I mean, you mentioned this at the very beginning, but like, okay, you eventually save him and beat Woodfall Temple and save the princess that's in the Deku princess that's in there and whatever. But then when you restart time, like, they're just going to kill him and eat him every cycle, right?
Every cycle that you don't go do the Woodfall Temple.
Which you're not going to do again.
Time complete itself, right? Like, fortunately, all of these horrible things are on this 3-day clock as opposed to, there are things that happen, throughout the course of time progressing that you can't start. But it's so dark to just be like, I helped these people, but now they're stuck in an infinite loop of this problem.
Yeah, and like obviously it's like for a greater purpose. You're trying to like eventually help everyone by saving the fucking world. But it's just
by
so
stopping
dark
the moon from crashing.
Yeah, but like it's just so dark that like while you're doing this, there's all of these horrors happening in the world that you know about and can prevent, but literally don't have enough time.
Yeah, it's really, again, I said player guilt earlier in the podcast. I stand by that. It's like a really, really cool mechanism for, evoking emotion within your playthroughs. As far as the Deku Palace goes, I know I already used the word certified banger for Song of
great
Healing.
music. Great
How
music.
good is that music?
So good.
Oh my god,
So good.
it is just it
music
makes you
in general is very different than Ocarina. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but I just feel like Ocarina had the more iconic, more like memorable, like this start to finish, this piece of music is perfection. But like Majora's more has like moments, whether it's like a dark moment, a twisted moment, like Deku's kind of like an upbeat, happy moment, like more of a, traditional Zelda kind of moment. Of just like, oh, this is fucking great. And then like it doesn't like last for 5 minutes like an Ocarina of Time song might. But it's just like a memory of like, it hit when I like entered there. That music was fucking sick in there.
Yeah, it makes you want to get spotted by the guards a lot and thrown out a lot, which I definitely did.
I did too, yeah.
And I love that you have to go and talk to the guards again, and they're like, hey, you shouldn't have done that, but also today's a special day. Go see the foolish monkey again. Like, we're glad you want to keep going to see the foolish monkey. Like, they're such a funny pay respect. It's cool too in this mode that you're like getting some insight into like Deku culture that you don't get in Ocarina. Like Ocarina being more focused on like the fairy children and like that sort of thing in the forest. Like this is a whole like, you know, race that exists in this universe that like you see their palace, you see their king, you see their, you know, princess eventually. You see that they like to eat monkeys as punishment, maybe. You know, like there's a lot going on here that, you know, just kind of gives you more insight into this world, into this universe.
Totally.
So you check up the boxes. Eventually you know, figure out you gotta go find some beans and, you know, levitate your way around this palace to sneak into the jail. And then you talk to the monkey.
Oh my God.
You bust out your Deku bagpipes or whatever.
You think it's going to be your ocarina, but yeah, you have these fucking bagpipes.
Yeah. And he softly chirps you the song to bring the temple out of the water. It's amazing.
Cute. It's so good.
Yeah. Just absolutely beautiful, great moment. And then obviously because you're singing in a jail cell with a bunch of people, everyone's like, you know, hey, what's going on here? Get out of our palace again. But also, if you want to come back and see the foolish monkey, that's cool.
And so that's how you eventually unearth the Woodfall Temple, which is so sick. The way it comes out from the bottom of the lake or whatever.
Yeah,
it looks so good. Like I don't know, the graphics are what they are. You know, I would never say like this has the best graphics. It's not that kind of game at all. It does not. But this was one of the like kind of rare moments where I was just like, that actually looks fucking amazing. Like the temple coming up from the water. They really like to use this like sort of like blur trippy effect in this game. They use it like constantly, which is I think it's pretty cool, but it's maybe a little overdone. But you enter your first temple. Welcome.
Yeah, it's just the monolith coming out of the water with the single door and the tree, and we make it. So I know you had a bit of a realization with regards to what persists between resetting time and not as it goes with temples. I'm curious, like when you entered the temple, like what day was it? What time was it?
Ooh, good question. I actually have no idea. I would guess it was probably around like nighttime of the second day or something like that, because I did all of this stuff that we've been talking about. This is like one cycle. Like I didn't reset at any points in like the Deku Palace or anything like that, and I actually beat the whole temple on the same day. I didn't have to restart the temple. The thing that happened to me was it's like a side thing. I don't know if it's essential yet because I don't remember this game at all, but within each temple in Majora's Mask, there's also like fairies that make up a great fairy. And so I knew that I wanted to do that. Like the importance of the fairies in Ocarina are like crucial, you know? So I was like, I definitely want to do that. I'm also just really enjoying the game. So I'm like, I'm more like enthused to be like completionist. So I beat Woodfall, all good. Don't have that much time left. It's definitely the third day by now, the final day. And I go back into the temple to find all the fairies, which, by the way, the fucking fairy wig, I love so much.
It's such a good mask.
So you get to put on, like, you start to understand that there's going to be a lot of masks in this game, but they don't
You have a whole inventory page dedicated to them. And at this point, you have 2 of 20, basically.
But you don't transform into a fairy, for those who haven't played. Those are only very specific masks where Link actually transforms. You just put this mask over your face and it looks really funny. It's like the great fairy face and the
huge hair,
flowing pink hair. And you can use it to detect if there's a fairy hidden somewhere in the room, which is
and it attracts them to you as well. Like if you're wearing it, they'll come towards you instead of like sitting in their position.
It's really nice and really convenient for like what could have been a very annoying task, you know, because like you just don't know. Do I have to keep looking around in here? Or do I have to move on? You know, like that annoying feeling that a lot of games have with like secrets and stuff. They have a good workaround here. So I was going through, I was getting the fairies, and I was running. I was like very, very low on time, and I had 14 out of 15 fairies found in the temple. And I was like, all right, I need to calm down. I need to just reset time, come back. I thought maybe within temples everything was like holy and I would have the fairies, and that's when I was like, oh, you fucking dickhead game, I have to find all the fairies again.
The temple goes submerged. You come back, you find the temple submerged, you don't have any fairies, you don't have any items to go into this temple to like explore with, like,
but you do have the bow.
You have the bow, and you have the checkpoint of the owl statue.
The checkpoint of the owl statue, so you can fast travel to where the temple is, and you can, like Hayden pointed this out in our Discord. It's like the temple was like a breeze. Like once you've beaten a temple, like I fucking flew through it. Like nothing is a puzzle. I know where everything is. I just quickly throw on my wig. If it's glowing, I'm like, all right, there's a fairy I need to get. I mean, what did I say? I was like, oh, I wrote in Discord, I was like, oh, you're fucking kidding me. I'm mad. And Nolan said, oh, someone just lost all his rupees going back in time. And I was like, who cares about rupees? Like, once again, like Ocarina and this game, one constant is like, who fucking cares about rupees? So useless. Like, I'm always at 99. Don't care at all. But anyway, I said to him, I had 14 or 15 fairies in Woodfall. I was running out of time, started a new cycle, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm angry, wearing my wig, finding all the fucking fairies on one go through. And Nolan responded, I'm angry, I'm wearing my wig, I'm finding all the fucking fairies, me on a Friday night in the West Village. And it's just so good. But yeah, so I just breezed through the temple, found all the fairies, put the Great Fairy back together, and she granted me some power, and good to go. That was basically where I ended after, because I had already beaten Woodfall. So that was basically where I like stopped for this episode. Yeah,
something Svenny said in the chat too is like he did a backtrack and realized a bunch of things were lost and became frustrated with that, which I totally understand. I think it's like it's like a really uncommon usage of this mechanic, right? And his verbiage exactly is like the game does not respect my time.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Which is true. And I responded to him, I was like, well, the only thing the game respects is time, right?
Yeah,
like it has sort of these defined systems around it, which, to be fair, if you'd read the manual, not saying that anyone sitting here in 2024 should be reading the game manual.
I disagree. I think you should.
You would be at least like prepared for this kind of stuff. But the sort of like analogy that I could make here is like the game. It's not the game's job to make it easy for you to accomplish things. It's your job to figure out where the game is making it like challenging for you to do things.
Yeah.
And the good example, like analogy that I want to use is like when you play golf, like you're not going, like the easiest way to get the ball in the hole is to walk over with the ball in your hand and drop it in the hole. The reason why like golf is fun is because there's a mechanism that makes it more challenging to hit the ball in a specific way, in order to actually achieve getting it in the hole. So it's sort of the restrictions and limitations that the games place on us that like creates that fun, because without it, it's just like accomplishing a task. And accomplishing a task, all you have to do is do the thing, right? So
is golf a roguelike?
Oh man, how much time do we have?
I mean, as soon as you get the ball in the hole, you write down the number of strokes it took you to get there, and then you just restart on a procedurally generated new level with a new ball at the beginning. And you have none of your power ups from the last hole.
It's not procedurally generated. They're persistent.
Yeah, I mean, it should be.
That would be cool.
If golf was better, it would be.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
actually, you're right though. Sorry, it is semi-procedurally generated because people change hole placement all the time on golf courses. That's the one thing that's fairly customizable. There you go. To finish that tangent,
and Mother Nature and shit. But
that's true.
No, I actually completely agree with you though. I think it totally respects your time. I mean, it in a weird way, it like brings everything that's a crucial component to the surface. It's like, I need to, if I can't finish this temple, I should stop now. Like if it's mid third day and I'm starting a new temple, like I'm not understanding the mechanics of the game, because the things you lose are rupees, bombs, arrows. That's it, basically.
Then stray fairies keys, as you pointed
like
out.
Stray fairies, like keys within dungeons, which again, you shouldn't even be starting a dungeon if there's not that much time left. It's all kind of useless. Like in one run through Termina Field, and you probably have like 15 rupees, 20 arrows, and 10 bombs. Yeah. Just by like cutting down a few things of grass. So it kind of like makes the stuff that feels really important in Ocarina, but is actually superfluous and like doesn't really matter. Your wallet's always full. You always have full magic. You always have full arrows. You always have full bombs. And it just says like, yeah, these are superfluous. Like they don't really matter. Like it is like a consumable that you can get at any time you ever need one, and will always provide you with one even while you're in a dungeon if you need it to get through a level. So like, fuck it. Who cares about them?
There is really thoughtful level design to that end. And I experienced this playing through Woodfall Temple. There's the little room where you have to like light a couple of torches in a row.
Yes.
And the main central room before that, there's two of the like enemy that you kill that always drops a Deku stick to do that.
Yep.
So they have really, really thought this through. I think also, I mean, it's worth pointing out, Woodfall is a little bit harder than like the Deku tree, the first temple in Ocarina of Time. While also, I think, taking a lot of like lessons from what was really like fun about all of the temples and experiences in Ocarina. Like, I think there's nothing like horribly challenging about it. I did die once. I fell into poison water as human. Like, I know. And then couldn't get out in time.
You're probably wearing the fucking hover boots and you slipped off.
Yeah, you know me. It's not like horribly challenging, but I think that it is definitely a sort of like refined process, that took a bunch of the lessons learned from some of those early temple designs. And yeah, to your point, the way I play this, which, you call it how you want it. Whenever I get to a temple entrance with an owl, I smack the owl, make sure I can get back, I make sure I can get in the temple, and then I reset the cycle. Because I don't like the sort of
that's
stress
like a personal
I'm starting on
decision.
Day 2. I still beat the temples usually with a slowdown time in like a single day. It's still possible to do that. Some of the other ones are a little bit longer, more complicated, but not like they're all accomplishable in one cycle. They have to be, otherwise this game wouldn't work. So I do it that way, but I find that this temple is, it's really good. There's some really creepy moments, like the little like black things that are on the floor of the first room.
Those. Yeah.
And then when you go into that room, it's like, I sense a lot of evil here. It's like totally pitch black and these things are like swarming you.
You just see their eyes.
Yeah, it's like actually quite stressful on 3 hearts too. Or 4 if you've, managed 4 heart pieces at this point. To like get everything lit and then to kill everything. Like, there's some really cool, creepy moments in this. It's a little bit tricky, but, not too tricky.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked about the temple. I'm realizing as you're going through it right now.
Yeah. So those are the things that jumped out to me about this one. Like those little creepy black things. The switching, we already talked a little bit about between Deku and regular Link to accomplish different tasks. Like the poison water, like this.
Which I love actually, like on the note of switching, like I didn't do it the first time, but I did it when I went back to the temple to get the fairies. It's like when it's the pitch black room and there's all the little like shadow creatures or whatever. I just switched to Deku Link because his basic attack is just like an AoE in a circle.
Spinny, yeah.
And I just fucking like mutilated all of them. I just like spun around in a circle, killed all of them. It was great. I was like, oh, just another like use of the mechanics that I didn't think of. That's awesome.
I tried to run around and light the torches because I thought they would like scatter.
Oh, no.
If I got all the no, not at all. I still had to kill them.
And the music in Woodfall I think is really good. Again, it's good in a very different way. It's good in like an experimental way. It's not like an iconic Ocarina top 40 pop song. It's like subtle, what's the word I'm looking for? Like drum circle, like tribal drum circle drums. But then like on top of it, there's like some insane kind of like opera screaming, like hooting, like some haunted opera shit going on the whole time, which I thought was like great. I loved it.
It's almost like if you like put on Aphex Twin on Spotify on your phone without a subscription, and like the first or second random song that comes on.
Yeah, and it's lowered to like 64 kilobytes per second. It's just like some weird shit. It's really crushed. But there is one fight also just on top of it that I loved, which is just the gecko that rides the turtle.
The turtle, yeah.
Such a great fight. Everything that I was talking about earlier crystallized into one fight of switching between the different links and using that to your advantage. So basically, like, the turtle charges you with the gecko on top. You have to bury yourself into a flower as Deku Link, pop out of it when the turtle's right above you to flip it on its head, switch back to regular Link, whip out your bow that you just got, hit the gecko with it, do it over and over again. Just felt really like action packed. Just like I'm like doing so much stuff. I'm having so much fun. This is really cool. And I'm like using everything I've learned all in once and all in this, like, barely even a mini boss. This is just like a fight that just happens.
It's a big departure, from the again, the Ocarina formula of like, I got this item in this dungeon. This is the item that's going to, kill the enemy. This is all I need. It definitely is a big deviation from that, which, a very creative fight.
And I know that like Ocarina is also a 3D action game, but like that, I feel like this felt already almost more action packed than like most of everything in Ocarina to me. Like it just felt like I was just like so engaged like in this fight. Like it felt really fair, really fun, like really cool. I just loved it. And then you fight the boss.
I love
to be
boss.
honest, like I'm still not really sure what the fuck is going on. I just like sometimes hit him, sometimes didn't hit him, eventually sorted him to death. But like his aesthetics are really cool.
He's like this huge like tribal deity, and the noises he makes are so good. It's so good. I wouldn't do it justice. Here's the sound effects playing right now.
I'll put it in right now.
You'll put it in. But it's just again so unsettling. Like it's so creepy. You're just like, what in the fuck is going on here? Because this has nothing to do with anything that I've seen so far. Like it's actually like, it's not like a hard boss, but it's actually a fairly challenging like kind of interaction, kind of to your point with some of the randomness of like when you hit him and not. It's not like, oh, I see his eye, I shoot his eye, when his eye is open, he's dead.
Yeah, like that's in Ocarina, the equivalent is like Navi says like, exactly what you just said. Like his eye is a weak point, like hit him when he opens it, right? Like that's like kind of the Ocarina fight, as Navi tells you exactly what to do. You just need to dodge like one or two things and you'll win the fight. This is just like, I think what Tattle says is just like, if he gets too close to you, like you're in trouble or something like that. It's like something really vague, and you're just like, okay, like I'll try and shoot him with arrows, but then he starts blocking them, and you're just kind of like, fuck, I don't know what to do. I'm like off book all of a sudden.
Yeah, he also has like a nice like medley of attacks, which I think is not true of a lot of the bosses in Ocarina. Like he's got his sword, he puts like fire rings around you, he summons like random like critters or whatever to come after you. Like I said, it's not like a hard boss fight, but when you're on 3 hearts, and there are a bunch of areas to replenish, but on 3 hearts, it's definitely like an area where you can make a mistake. It's like a lot higher risk than some of the other early interactions I feel like that you experience in like a Deku Tree or a Dodongo's Cavern. And you obviously you beat this guy, resolve that.
I just want to say really quick, it's just funny. Funny is maybe the wrong word, but coming from Ocarina, where like they got mini canceled because they used like religious music in the fire temple and had to change it. Like this guy's like a little insensitive. Like I saw this like, just this, like you said, like tatted up, like tribal dance. I was just like, okay, he's not really a tribal dancer. Like, as you said, it's way more like psychedelic and like otherworldly than that with like the sounds he's making and stuff like that. I just thought it was a little bit like, okay, yeah, we're still like pulling from that.
We could just rebrand him to Woodfall Temple Boss or Woodfall Temple Commanders.
There you go.
So yeah, no, I feel that. But yeah, so we wrap up this boss fight. You said you had to then go back and do the fairies, obviously, which is hilarious.
I did that, which is fine.
It's hilarious to me, and while also being like, I'm actually a little surprised you went back and did it.
I've told you 2 times so far in my playthrough that I haven't done the thing, and then I needed to do the thing. So that is my Zelda logic. Is like, what is the annoying thing that I was too lazy to do? Well, it's go back to the temple that I just beat and collect all the fairies that I didn't collect, right? Like that is exactly the type of thing. And in Ocarina, just to round it all off, in Ocarina, one of the annoying things that I didn't do was like look for all of the great fairies, which I eventually like needed to do.
You needed the fire to get into the fire temple,
spell to get in. So I'm just like, okay, hands up, like I'll play your fucking game. I know the rules of your universe now, so I'm gonna do the annoying thing, and I'm gonna go get the fairies.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did go back and do that. It's I will say it's not essential. It gives you really good magic powers every time you find all the stray fairies. Like they're good. I think for what it's worth, this is like by far the worst one. Like the other 3 are so much more impactful.
I love the look of the fairies, though.
Yeah,
I think that's
really
part
cute.
of like why I want to get them. Like they have these like dumbass little faces on them, like it's
and the
so,
little like curly Q hair
it's
thing.
So
like,
cute. Like again, like Ocarina of Fairies, just like a ball of light. But in this, they have these like little like kissy faces and closed eyes and like sort of bunny ears. Like they're just so weird and cute. It's just like I love them.
So you killed the boss. I said, and the way that I'm trying to have us phrase this for these episodes is that you're going to play through Woodfall and the aftermath. Or Temple and the aftermath.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how much you did after beating the temple and just sort of like where you landed after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't really sure what you meant by aftermath. I mean, the immediate aftermath of beating the temple and freeing the spirit that's trapped in the Woodfall mask is that I'm not sure if I'm using like the terminology correctly there. I mean, that whole thing was so fucking sick. There's like this giant fucker in like the water. He's teaching us the song in his weird, like deep, off-kilter voice.
Oh, the giant.
The giant. Like
he's a face and limbs.
Yeah, like it's so cool. Everything's really faded and blurry. And like I said, they're using that sort of like blurry, like dreamy effect, which clearly is like new technology or something because they use it constantly. Just like a hypnotic, weird cinematic sequence. And yeah, I loved that. And then you have to return the Deku Princess and she jumps on her dad and that's all funny. And
how did you feel about putting her in a bottle after how challenging the blue fire was in Ocarina of Time?
I learned my lesson, but also I really think they took some notes of like criticisms maybe from Ocarina and just like cleaned that stuff up because she specifically says like, put me in anything. Like, I don't mind really tight spaces or whatever. Like I immediately was like, oh, I'll probably just bottle her up. Like I have nothing else. Right. So that required no thought, and it was just that like subtle little text that made me there. So I did all that, and then like I said earlier, I went back, got the fairies. I went back to Clocktown because I had a little time left in the day. I think I played the shooting game, which I won, which is a really fun game, and then I went to the treasure shop, which I literally spent all my money on. And I think it's like a scam or something, or maybe you need some other ability or something. Like no matter what I do, every wall around the chest goes up and I can't get to the chest. So
I did it successfully once on my first day cycle. Okay. I can't remember if sometimes it's a scam and sometimes it isn't or something like that.
I played like 5 times in a row and I was like, this is not possible. I don't think so. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
So the one aftermath thing that I think you missed, which I hope you haven't reset time yet on this playthrough, and if you have,
I definitely
apologize.
did to save.
Okay, well,
yeah.
There's one more thing that you should go back and do, which means that you'll have to go back to Woodfall, and it's pretty easy to mainline the boss.
You the fast travel is so convenient. Like, I don't even care about going back to Woodfall. It's so easy. Yeah.
The Deku Princess tells you that if you go outside of the Deku Palace to go see the butler.
Oh, I did do this. Oh, you
did this. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because this is the reference that I was making. So the Deku Butler is one of the aftermath tasks you have to do. It's basically like a Dampy style grave race.
I have that note exactly. It's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's not easy.
And the thing that I noticed while I was playing this too, I was playing with headphones, is that the like spatial audio is actually incredible.
It's so
in
good.
The sequence.
I was also playing with headphones. Yeah.
There are a lot of situations where I just knew which direction to go because of how good the 3D spatial audio was.
100%.
Which is like actually crazy.
It is.
This being a game that came out in 2000, how good it is.
Yeah.
And then the point that I sort of alluded to at the top of the podcast, he talks about how fun the race was. He gives you the Mask of Sense, this like gross pig mask. And then he talks about how he used to race his son, but then maybe he like pushed his son too hard. And his son is the lost spirit, the warped tree that you see in the intro sequence.
How do you know?
So, I looked it up.
Okay, but how are we supposed to know is what I
think you're supposed to put 2 and 2 together, and there's like I think it like comes up in the credits of this game or something. Okay. So that's so your Deku persona is the embodiment of like his dead son. So it's this like really cool like moment of like tying these things together, of doing all that. So I'm glad you did that, because
I did that.
That task is almost exactly what I meant by the aftermath.
Okay.
You'll see.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what you meant. Yeah.
I wanted it to be a little ambiguous, both because I wanted you to do more stuff now that you'd accomplished a temple, and also I wanted to make sure there's kind of, whenever you finish a temple, the like everything changes, right? You've turned a really bad situation into a positive one, and people are more willing to help you, or things are enabled that weren't enabled when
and you have an item, you can maybe like do a thing you weren't able to do. Yeah, there's always stuff like that in Zelda. And, so I have the pig mask. I have a couple other masks. I have like the dog mask. I have maybe one other than Deku, but I can't really remember.
Yeah, you have the fairy. There's some other ones that you could have gotten at this point.
Dog, pig. I think that might be all I have.
There's some others you can get at this point. You've now enabled a few more to getting into this next area, but this is a really good transition. And I don't have a ton of other things to say about this section, but I do have something to say about the sections to come, and something that I've been talking to Hayden and Sean about, which is that I want to really encourage you to find all of the masks.
Okay. Okay.
So
homework.
So I know that you're not a side quester, and candidly, I'm not either. I'm probably like the kind of gamer who plays things to about 75% completion.
Yeah,
like
fair.
I'll maybe be really invested during the first part of playing a game, and then towards the end, I'm just kind of like, you know what, I'm ready to be done with this. I think that this is one of the rare side quests that is really, really worth the effort.
Okay.
And I don't mean that necessarily because like you'll get all the masks and something amazing will happen. Something will happen. But I mean that more because finding the masks is very representative of the really unique types of interactions that they've designed and that occur with the different characters in this universe, how they like transpire through the time loops, how you actually find them is like there's just a lot of really, really unique and fun interactions that I think are at the mainstay of why I consider this to be, my favorite Zelda game and maybe my favorite game of all time.
But I mean, how am I going to do that with not knowing anything? Like, honestly, like, at what point do I just look up, like, this is how you get this mask, this is how you get that mask? Like, I've been talking to everyone, I have them down in my bomber's notebook. I've been like, beating the mini games and stuff like that. But I'm sure there's like some mask that's like, you have to do this, this, this in this order, or you'll not get this. Like I'll never find it probably.
Hayden and Sean are prepared for this. They're working on a light guide for some of the more complicated
Hayden
ones.
and Sean, the two guests who will be on episodes 2 and 3. So that'll be
So they're talking through how best to do that without it being like overtly spoilery. But as far as like my advice, just keep exploring, keep talking to everyone. You'll find probably 60 to 70% of the masks pretty naturally, I think. So they'll just come up as you're going through things, or as you see different moments in the game and story progress. So don't worry too much about it. And the ones that are complicated, and there are some complicated ones, you may need some reference to get through there, but
I'll probably just look them up or whatever.
You've got support in doing that. But I do think it's really worth it, and it's worth it to take a stab at it without looking it up first.
I'll do it.
But make sure you do it. It is one of the rare things in terms of side questing that I think is very worth it in games.
Okay. And next episode with Hayden, we're going to be doing the next 2 temples, and I'll find as many masks as I can. Jump in with Hayden. 3rd episode with Sean. I don't actually know what we're playing in that one, but we'll mention it, next episode. And then I think there will be a 4th episode that's sort of like end of game and like, retrospective about everything with the game and research, because I've also like limited the research I've been doing because I don't want like that many spoilers and stuff like that. And maybe we'll get everyone on for that episode, or two out of the 3 of you guys or something like that to talk about it. I'm looking forward to it. Great game so far.
It's the best. It's the best. So it really is.
So good. All right, dude. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, as always. Appreciate it.
Adios.